For those of you who have not met me, I'm Dr. Symons. Nice to meet you. All right, so before we go into the Living to 100 class, I want to welcome you all here. Tonight is the all jest aside, as we go into Living to 100 tonight. So here's the challenge. Again, so you want the change journal, put your email address down for us, and again, any others that you want to get the change journal to do the 30-day process with you. Guess what happens when you engage other people in a process with you? Who's it better for? It's better for everybody. And that's what a big part of tonight's class is, that if you want to have more success, then engage in a more successful culture. Right? If you lived in a neighborhood where all the kids were doing drugs and engaged in violent behavior, would you want to get your kids out of that neighborhood? Yeah, right? Because there's a fear that either they would get hurt one way or learn a methodology of hurting others that's not safe. And so, unfortunately, a lot of us are living in a culture still that is engaged in hurting us or those around us. And so the best way to stay safe is to first know where this is living. So your body can live in America, but your mind might have to live somewhere else. Does that make sense? Because right now, every fourth commercial on television is what kind of ad? Telling you to take drugs. Right now, the United States is ranked 50th out of 50 in the Western world when it comes to diseases that we have, like heart disease, cancer, diabetes. Diseases that Americans are so much higher in that the National Institutes of Health, Dr. James Kleeman, called it diseases for dummies because they're preventable with a healthy lifestyle. Okay? It's not that you get it because you're less intelligent. It's because you're already ingrained in habits that aren't going to favor you. All right, so you want to make sure that you're engaged in the 30-day challenge because it's going to help you and do that. So what's the first thing that we do is set goals. Because if you don't know what you want, do you think that the CEO of Pfizer knows exactly what he wants for you and for your kids? It's to be on what? Drugs. For how long? Forever. So if I were to ask you, which country takes the most medications? Which one do you think it is? Just by a little or a lot? Okay, so we're 5% of the world's population. Do we take more than 5% of the world's medications? Yes. More than 50% of the world's medications. And so if that was the way to get healthy, then the country that took the world's most medications would be the world's healthiest. But it's not happening. All right, so what we're going to do today is investigate some of the cultures around the world that are just killing it in a good way, doing very well, and not getting the same diseases that we are. All right, so if you're not already hooked up to our newsletters or on Facebook, we go to drsymons.com or I Want Health after facebook.com/I Want Health. Okay, so those are the ways to connect with us and stay engaged. All right, so despite the most healthcare spending, you know what our number one cause of bankruptcy is in this country is? Medical bills. And you know what the number one recipient of retirement dollars in this country is? Anybody know? Nursing homes. So a lot of you hear my stats and you actually memorize them. That's great. But yeah, how many of you want a nursing home to get every dollar that you've ever just worked so hard in your entire life? Or how many of you can't wait to be on 6 or more medications? That's nobody's dream. And yet that's what's happening. So we were in last place in all of these benchmark areas: infant mortality, injuries and homicide, teenage pregnancies and STDs, disabilities, AIDS that's preventable, drug-related deaths, obesity and diabetes, heart disease, chronic lung disease, and that's according to National Academic Press just this year. So, which country has the most depression? We do. Guess which country takes the most antidepressants? Here. We do. It's the second most prevalent drug in this country. And so, here's the thing. If you're living in this culture where everyone, well, like 1 out of 3 people is on antidepressants, where people are getting heart disease and cancer and diabetes. 5 out of 6 Americans are headed towards those diseases. Okay, if everyone's doing that, then guess what you do? So exactly, you don't do what everyone else is doing. You kind of figure out, all right, well, success comes from good decisions. Do you guys agree with that? Good decisions come from experience sometimes, from wisdom, from knowledge. And sometimes experience comes from bad decisions. Do you guys get that? So it's okay that in the past you've made some mistakes, that you've made some bad choices. We all have. There's not one of us who hasn't. But if you make the same mistake over and over again, it's not a mistake anymore, it's a choice. You guys get that? If you understand that the consequences of your actions will lead towards disease, and you're still choosing those actions, then don't be surprised when that happens. And so here's a little video that I thought was pertinent.
What will your last 10 years look like? Will you be quick enough for a game of tag with your grandchild? Strong enough to embrace every moment? Will you grow old with vitality? Or get old with disease? It's time to decide. The average Canadian will spend their last 10 years in sickness. Change your future at makehealthlast.ca.
Good video.
So yeah, I mean, just a minute-long thing that kind of shocks your system. That guy obviously on this side made some choices that were different, and it was the same actor portraying both characters. So where you end up, we have our book Cruise Ship or Nursing Home. I don't particularly, especially after the Carnival fiasco, I don't like the name of that book. But what it's trying to tell you is that you have choices. You have where you end up in life. And so hopefully tonight I can influence you just a little bit on making some better choices. So Albert Schweitzer said the greatest discovery of intergeneration is that we can alter our lives by altering the attitudes of our minds, that we can make choices. And this is part of Mac's Mind. And the second one that I wanted to throw at you is by Thoreau, which is, I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his or her life by conscious endeavor. So you have to choose what you want. All right. So the best way to, sort of show what Americans are doing wrong is by showing you what some successful cultures around the world are doing. Because even though some of these cultures that we're talking about have zero access to the same type of technology and medicine that we do. Guess what happened in Canada about 8 years ago? Yeah, Cindy, thank you very much. 8 years ago, they had where the hospitals and the doctors were going on strike, and they thought, haha, we're gonna show those people that our unions are strong and that we can hold them to the fire and get our salaries raised in these hospitals. You know what happened when the hospitals went on strike for 2 weeks? The mortality rate went down by 14%. That's not funny. It's really scary. So in this country.
Where is that castle? I never heard of it.
Former Georgia, Russian Georgia.
Okay.
That's why I brought you here tonight, Tatiana. So because they have a steep terrain, to go from one house to the next, they actually have to climb up or down hill in order to get there. We call that surge training or burst training, and it's essential number 4. And what that does is it oxygenates the body and it keeps you more fit. So fitness was huge in terms of longevity and healthy longevity. Again, it's not about living to 100, because how many of you want to would love to live to 100 if your genetics could permit. Would you want to? Better than the alternative, right?
Oh, yeah.
But how would you want to live to 100 if for the last 20 years of your life you couldn't remember your kids' names, you were peeing in a diaper, everything that you had ever done your entire life was going in and out and you weren't remembering it anymore. You're on a whole bunch of medications, and every hour you have to take more. We want to talk about healthy longevity, mental health, sharp eyesight, and things weren't, presbycusis and presbyopia weren't happening to these people because what were they eating? Mostly a vegetarian diet. So very light on meat. So if you look at your plate, okay, essential number 2 or number 3 is nutrition. So if you look at your plate, what you want is that instead of having the meat as the 80% and the vegetables as the 20%, we want you to do what? Flip it, right? So that your vegetables make up the 80% and your meat makes up the 20%. Your meat is the side dish. You guys get that? Mm-hmm. And of course, we've all been trained to think, that certain foods are bad for you, like fat, when, if you're going to have dairy, do you want no fat, low fat dairy? No. The answer is actually you want full fat. You want full fat in your good fats. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because fat is something that's really, really important in making up the nerve tissue and your brain tissue. Well, how many of you think that your brain is important when it comes to your health? And your brain is it. It's the only part of your body that heals every other part of your body. So make sure you're getting full fat. But when you are eating meat, eat the way that sort of God created the food to be. The closer you get to nature, the better it's going to be. And so if you have meat, make sure that it's grass-fed meat, okay, or natural product. Because if it's grain-fed, was it created to have grain? Was a cow ever meant to eat corn? No. And then what do they use that corn? What do they do to that corn? They spray it with how much pesticides? It takes 5 to 8 pounds of pesticides to actually create 1 pound of meat. Okay. And the bioaccumulation of that stuff makes us toxic. Well, what do you think your body does to those toxins? It protects you from them by storing them in fat. Okay. So the reason why we've gotten so much more obese in the last 20, 30 years is because of toxicity, because of sedentary lifestyle, because of thinking wrong, because of a lot of these things that are devoid of nutrition going into us. All right. So why don't these people retire? Because it's not about, a lot of it's not about a job. They're farming. They're doing things that in order to sustain their life. Does that make sense? So when do you stop eating? Never. So they don't stop, working. And you know what? They tend to enjoy their lives more. They tend to be in a place where they actually like what they're doing. So why would you retire if you're on a purpose, if you're on a mission? Okay? If the day in your life is you wake up to the rude sound of an alarm. How many of you are with me? Okay. An alarm goes off. What does that do to your cortisol levels? It spikes them. Okay, so now you're hormonally imbalanced. You're like, you're freaking out. You're ready. And then the next thing you do, you're like, I don't want to get out of bed. No. And so you have a choice when you wake up. You could say, good morning, God, or good God, it's morning. And so if your choice is the second one where you're like, I don't want to get out of bed, and then so that's even more stress. What's happening to your adrenal glands? They're still getting burnt out. Your thyroid's getting burnt out, so you're hormonally creating so much more stress. What does your body then want to do to all the calories you put into your body? It's going to hold on to those things, like a squirrel going after a nut before winter. And then you go and what do you grab? Well, if you're the average American, not you, because you guys are super normal. I love that, right? But the average American's going for like a bowl of cereal, or even just running out, grabbing a cup of coffee, or nothing at all. So if you're doing that, what does that do to your leptin and your insulin and your adrenaline? It's just frying your hormones. You guys get that? Yeah. So which is what creates aging, and people are just getting so burnt out before their time. And then you need that coffee to keep you up during the day. You're putting on things on your skin, that absorb it, because your skin is permeable, right? You guys know that. You don't put it on your skin unless you're going to eat it. So if it's not good enough to eat, don't put it on your skin. So you're putting on lead or some other kind of makeup or something, or some kind of skin thing that's going to clog your pores, and your body detoxes through the skin. So now you clog those pores and stuff can't get out. So use natural skin products. That's just one of those things you have to do. brush your teeth with fluoridated toothpaste, and fluoride is just a neurotoxin. And then, so as we go throughout the day, and I'm just like at 8 a.m. at this point, or even earlier, 6 a.m. for some of you. And then you go to a job that might be stressful for you. But how do you get to that job? You drive, and what do? You sit through this position like this, and then how do you feel about the guys next to you? Everyone else in the world's a bad driver except for me. You know, and then, so when you're done with your road rage and you get to the office and you sit in front of a computer and your head's out over here, what are you doing to those nerves? Are they healthy or sick? Now they're sick. So while these guys are walking up and down mountains and saying, hello neighbor, good to see you. Just wanted to stop by, give you some of my fresh produce, having a great day. Let's breathe some of that air. I'm going to go back to my house now. We hang around with people all day at the office we may or may not like, and then do jobs we don't like, and then go home and have stress at home, and then go to bed and do it all over again. Okay. So, as we get older, are we more wise? Are we culturally, in a way, where people who are aged looked at as the people who have the wisdom, as the people who have the authority? Unfortunately, in our culture, it hasn't become that way. Now, because of technology in our information age, you can look up information on Google in 3 seconds, and older people are somewhat marginalized and they're pushed aside, and they're not oftentimes, like in some cultures, included in the family. Where these people are not, like you have 4 different generations living together. Does that make sense? And so we have there's the old age home, or the assisted living place, or the get out of here, we're done with you. So we have to be able to keep our families together. Just my little 2 cents there. So in Hunza, they said normal blood pressure, cholesterol, normal heart rates, no heart disease at all, cancer at all to speak of. I mean, these are people who are living, again, 90, 100 years old. They're still climbing around, climbing trees, picking fruit, energetic. They're doing the same thing over in Okinawa. And so, again, mostly flax and ancient grains, not like the processed stuff that we can buy on our shelves. If you can buy a grain in a package, let's say it's a bag of bread, and that bread can last on the shelf for 14 days and not get hard, guess what? Don't eat it. Right? Very little animal products here, so again, so their main meal right here is flaxseed, and they can survive very well on it. It's a whole good fat. It's got some good protein and carbohydrates in there. Mostly a raw diet, because when you cook things, what happens to the enzymes? They die. And so if you want to be alive, eat life. All right. But it's amazing, though. Isn't it amazing that you can take Spam and you are what you eat, right? So you can build a brand new body out of that. Think of it. You have 76 trillion-ish cells in your body. 100 million die every day. Don't be afraid. 100 million new ones are born to replace the ones that died. Made out of your food, water, and air. You literally are what you eat. To the best of your ability, you are what you absorb and you assimilate from the foods you put into your body. So imagine this. You have a building. And every day, bricks are falling out of that building. What do you need to put back in those holes that are falling out? New bricks. Right? Now, could you just take some cardboard and some paper and some balsa wood and put that up there? You could. You can paint it and make it look really pretty. It might look the same from the outside. Okay? The architect knows the plan. He's putting it all together. But the next time the stress comes around, and he huffs, and he puffs, what's going to happen to that house? It's going to blow the house down. And that might be a diagnosis of heart disease, or cancer, or diabetes. So make sure that the cells that you're replacing with the old ones that died off are with the healthiest superfoods that you can put back into your body. Do you want to be a Superman that is not affected by disease at all? You give your body superfoods as the raw materials to build your house of health. If you want to make changes in your life, the first step is raising your standards. What you are willing to settle for in your life. And so if you don't have your goals written down for what is acceptable and what is unacceptable, I have the pain and the pleasure of seeing hundreds and hundreds of people all the time. And from that, I get stories. I get stories of people who have unfortunately made mistakes, and they've had diseases, or their family members have. And I get to learn from that over and over again, thinking, I will never be in that situation. I will never have my kids have to spoon feed me. I will never have to, be in that, because I'll be darned if that ever happens to me. But I know what I have, and that's a plan. And I work my plan. Is it easy? No. Sometimes do I want to cheat? Yes. Sometimes do I cheat? Yes. Okay. But if I have a piece of bread once a week, is that going to really topple the mountain? No. But if the mountain is made out of bread, then we have a problem. All right. All right. So, and this in Vilcabamba, high cardiovascular fitness, muscle tone from hilly terrain again. So we live in Florida, guys. We're done. So guess where you have to make your hills? We call them our Saturday morning boot camp class. You will feel like you just climbed a hill. Believe me. It takes, how long does it take to work out, guys?
12 minutes.
12 minutes. Raise your hand if you don't have 12 minutes in a day to exercise. I want to see who my limited believers are. Okay. You all do, right? It's just a matter of what? Scheduling it and then making it real. And that's why we have the classes on Saturdays, because we want you to make sure that you're in a place where you feel comfortable, where you feel engaged, right? So we want you to come to our fitness class on Saturday morning, our 12-minute workout, and not your medical doctor's 12-minute workout class, and not your dentist's 12-minute workout class, right? Why? Because they don't have them, right? So here's what we want you to do. They also had no osteopenia and osteoporosis, no overweight people, which is tremendous, and no crime and no suicide. Why? Because the mind and the body are intricately related. And so one thing that happened in our soldiers over the last 6 years, I'm not sure if you guys know this, but one of the ways that we started to treat post-traumatic stress syndrome was with Prozac and its ilk. You guys know that? So we started taking almost all of these people, all these soldiers, who've been through major traumas. They were shot at, and they were afraid, having anxiety, couldn't sleep at night, and they put them all on antidepressant drugs. Do you guys know that last year and the year before that, more soldiers have died from suicide than from battle?
Yeah, I believe it.
It's estimated that 30% of our soldiers right now, or more, I think, are on antidepressant medications. So there's 5 essentials. And so if you're a patient here and you're just doing the maximized nerve supply, the adjustment portion of it, that's better still than 80% of the country. But you're really missing out if you're not doing all 5. I can't guarantee that you're going to be disease-proof if you're not doing all 5. This is the system. This is not the system. We spend a lot of time with our doctor's report and are teaching you how to do the exercises and the home care. So a lot of it is focused here. Why? Because you can't be healthy if the nerve's going to an organ are sick. Even if you have the best nutrition, the best exercise, minimize your toxins, if a nerve is dead, the organ that's attached to it is dead. Does that make sense? So I do appreciate this, but this isn't only it. Do you guys get that too? That if you're getting adjusted and your nerve power is on, but you're eating McDonald's, then the best that your organs can be is 100% McDonald's. That if you have formaldehyde and pesticides and PBCs and PBAs and all the other junk in your body, and you're not detoxifying that, then it's in you. And it can cause the same damage to nerves as physical pressure can, or emotional stress. Again, a nerve does not care if the stress is physical, chemical, or emotional. Health, from a neurological standpoint, is the ability of your brain to detect information and then tell your body how to respond in kind. Does that make sense? 2 + 2 is? Where are my mathematicians? Okay, great. So if your brain can perceive it properly, it can react to it properly. But if it's being hyperstimulated on the way up, it's going to be sick. If it's being inhibited or stimulated too much on the way down, if that's toxicity causing that, guess what you have to do? Get the toxins out. If it's being caused from your spouse in terms of emotional stress, guess what you have to do? No, you have to have a conversation. Make sure that you have some counseling or some planning going on there. All right, so first thing first, maximizing your mind. Successful cultures have a mindset of creating peace.
That's funny.
And so now we're going to start our chant, which is why I did this. I think that exercise can decrease stress.
Yes.
And so what's the big thing about exercise? What's one of the best things about exercise is why do people who smoke claim that it makes them feel how?
State of mind and
Relaxed. Okay. Why does that happen?
deep breaths, fresh air, relax.
Yeah. So imagine, if you guys had at your work a no smoke break, where 10 times a day, 20 times a day, you could take 5 minutes and go outside, leave the hubbub, and instead of actually putting a canter stick to your face, you could instead get your mind in a place of gratitude, where you could just do deep breathing. They actually did a study where they took smokers and had them do the same breathing that they do when they're inhaling. Okay. Let's get some candles up, Dr. McNabb and Dr. Barrett. Let's see if we can get that going, and we can. You don't have to go to the gym for 3 hours a day. As we said, 12 minutes is all you need. But let me kind of describe for you newbies what a surge or burst training looks and feels like. On a scale of 1 to 10, and the way that we worked with Team USA Judo, Wrestling, and Weightlifting when we went to the Olympic Games, the reason why they succeeded so well, in part, is because of the type of training that we added. And what it does is you go on a scale of 1 to 10, an intensity level of basically a 9 or a 10 for 20 seconds on, and then 20 seconds off, and then 20 seconds on, and then 20 seconds off. That is much better, and you can do it whether you're at the gym working with weights, or you can do it whether you're in a pool, you can do it on a bike, you can do it, I feel like Dr. Seuss here, but you can do it on a goat, you can do it with a boat. But the idea is, that can you tell I have young kids, that you're going full out as hard as you can, and so your full out, Donna, is it going to be the same as Dr. McNabb's full out? No. Okay? Definitely not. So the idea would be do it at your level of intensity. But guess what happens if you do it at your highest level of intensity for 20 seconds, or even maybe it might be for 15 seconds for you. And then you go. When you can't go as hard as you possibly can, when you start to decline even a little bit, you stop. And then you rest for the same period of time that you were engaged in that level of activity. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So if you can only hold it for 10 seconds, you go for 10 seconds and then you what? Stop for 10 seconds. Or until your heart rate comes down to a point where you feel like you can go again, which should be anywhere from 10 to 20 seconds. It shouldn't be any more than double the amount of time that you rested, that you went. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, if you do those, and we usually do, it's 12 repetitions of, so you're going basically 20 on, 20 off, 20 on, 20 off, 20 on, 20 off. And that's considered one, right? And you do that 3 times. So all in all, you're working out for 6 minutes, and you're resting for 6 minutes. How many of you feel like at least you can rest for the 6 minutes?
We can rest a little longer.
Yeah, you can rest as long as you want. But it's the 6 minutes that you're really going hardcore that makes your body do all of that work, and it increases your VO2 max, which is the amount of oxygen that you can support, so that your cells then become super oxygenated. There are 4 things that your cells need. They need food, water, air, and most importantly, life. Okay? So the things from the outside that your body needs are food, water, and air. And how long could you live without food? You could go weeks without food. You could go days if you wanted to without water. You can't go minutes without air. So that's the most important thing that you need from the outside, which is why if you're going to exercise, you want to exercise in a way which is going to increase your VO2 max, but it also increases your good hormones like HGH and testosterone, and decreases stress hormones like cortisol. When is the best time to exercise?
In the morning.
First thing in the morning, before you've actually eaten. So when your cortisol levels are at their highest, one of the best things you can do is take that and exercise. It actually decreases your cortisol levels, which will, when you start to eat then, not store it as fat. It's a great thing. It's a great methodology. The whole system works so that you wake up when you have to wake up, unfortunately, and if we could, we'd wake up when the sun woke us up or when our body rhythm woke us up. So if you're one of those people who wakes up before your alarm wakes you up, well, that's great. At that point, exercise. Exercise your body first, and then you can spend a few minutes. Some people do the exercise physically first. Other people do the mental exercises first. What I mean by that is waking up, doing your deep breathing, getting your mind and your spirit in a place where you're just like totally ready to achieve whatever it is that is planned for you for that day. Does that make sense? Kind of see your day as it's already happened. Claim it. Just you see all the good things that are ready to happen for you, and just get in a state of gratitude. And then boom, you're off. You get your 12 minutes of exercise. You put the best, healthiest foods you possibly can in your body. Most of you have heard how I make my shake in the morning, and the reason I do that is because, again, I only want the best going to my body. So I hand pick. Okay, well, I want this. I want the kale, and I want the spinach, and I want the the blueberries, and I want the chia seeds, and I want the flax, and I dump it all in a big shake. And I have the whey protein powder, and that for me, I know that I've already won, and it's only 6 o'clock in the morning. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so no matter what I do to my body the rest of the day, because I'm on my feet, I'm lifting people that are much bigger than I am, and so I have potential to hurt myself. So I've got to make sure that I'm as strong and healthy as possible, because if I'm hurt, then there's hundreds of people that I can't help. So that's the way I see it. I have to be strong. I have to make sure that my nutrition is good. I have to be sharp. The next thing we have to talk about besides exercise is nutrition. So when we talk about nutrition, there are fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Yes? Yes. And so knowing the difference between good fats and bad fats is huge. Most of you have the advanced nutrition plan. Yes? Yes. Okay. If something is stopping you from doing it, then please talk to us. We want to be there to encourage you, to support that process. I've seen so many cool miracles happen when people go on the advanced plan. People who are on blood pressure medications who get off of that. People who are on cholesterol medications who get off of that. People who lose weight like crazy. People who have much more energy. I have some people who gain weight when they go on it. Why? Because if you have toxicity, what does your body want to hold on to? It wants to store it around fat. So if you're putting good fat in your body, that might actually happen first while your body is detoxifying. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So don't give up if you tried it for a couple of weeks and it's not working out for you the way that you want it to. At the end of the day, I honestly don't care about weight. I care about fitness. I care about healthy longevity. I care about not getting diseases. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, how you look in a Speedo might be important to you, but honestly, nobody looks good in a Speedo, guys. So don't even worry about that. But the idea.
Nobody wants to stay in a Speedo.
No. Just don't go there, Max. So for the team that wins, Dr. Matt's going to show you what that looks like. But we really want to make sure that you're doing that process. And if you haven't yet started, then go ahead over these 30 days, make that part of your goal. Okay. The next thing we'll talk about is toxicity. How many of you feel like you've been exposed to toxins over the course of your lifetime? All of us have. Sanjay Gupta did a really good thing about 6 months ago on CNN. You can look it up on YouTube or elsewhere, where he basically showed how the average embryo, already had 3,000 man-made environmental toxins, in an unborn child, in the embryonic fluid. It was there. That was what the baby was stewing in and eating it. Because if you look at all of the plastics that have made it into our culture, and all of the things that we're breathing and soaking in, it's nasty. Even just taking a chlorinated shower and you're breathing all of that air, it's like a gas chamber. So you have to get a chlorine filter. Make sure that you are looking at your house in a new way. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Try to get the healthiest materials that you can afford, because at the end of the day, disease costs a whole lot more than pretty much everything else. And I'm not just talking about finances. Yes, Fidelity Investments said the average senior couple will need, at this point, $250,000 liquid in their bank account just to retire, to be able to have all of their doctor's office visits and afford their co-pays and drugs and all of that, and insurance payments. But not per year, no, in total. But still, I can think of a whole lot better uses of $250,000 than giving them to a drug company or an insurance company or a doctor. How many of you are with me?
Yes.
I mean, how many of you have been with me for 5 years or longer? Anybody here? Okay, just Sandy. Studies have actually shown that people who are under wellness care, chiropractic care for 5 years or longer, have 71% less spending on hospitalizations, on pharmaceuticals, 85% less on pharmaceuticals. And so, if you can take that $250,000 and cut that down by 70% less, right? Would that be a good idea?
Yeah.
So just making sure that you're doing these 5, and that's just doing one essential. Imagine you're now eating right, and you're doing your surge training. Now, you don't have to do the surge training 6 days a week to start. You can actually start 3 days a week. So pick your Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or your Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and start getting ready, getting comfortable with it, okay? And you can start, there's 2 DVDs, for those of you who don't know. There's the super fast and the fast. Guess which one you do? Both of them. Okay, so it's both. So you do super fast week 1, and then you do fast week 2. Then you do super fast, because a lot of people get this confused, so I want to make sure you're doing it properly. And you go back and forth between them, 2 of them. And there's a beginner, intermediate, and advanced for every single exercise. So what exercise 1 in, let's say, upper body, you may be doing the intermediate version of that exercise. But then the next exercise that comes up, you may be a beginner at. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So you do what you can do at the level that you can do it until you can graduate to that next level. And so always just stay with it. Make sure that you're pushing yourself. What works better? Is it hard to work out when you're working out by yourself? Say yes.
Yes.
Always.
Yes.
Because there's no one to nag you to say to do one more rep or one more set. Personal trainers are a great thing to have. Or a partner, a spouse, a son or a daughter, someone or a relative, a friend who's willing to do it with you. Does that make sense? So whoever your accountability partner is, if you don't have one, get one. And that's, again, one of the things about changing your culture is that who's going to change your culture? Are the drug companies going to change your culture?
They've already changed it.
The person who's going to change your culture for the better
It's you.
is sitting in your seat.
Right.
But there's a lot of people out there who don't have the knowledge, the information, to the resources that you have here. And so guess what? Part of your culture shift is to take one of them with you. If they don't want to do all 5 essentials now, guess what? That's okay. We live, we learn, we grow. Engage them in one of the essentials. Does that make sense? Of course, if they're doing exercise and they have subluxations or misalignments in their spine, is that exercise potentially going to make it worse? It could.
Yeah.
It could. So if I have a shift in my spine, which gravity is putting pressure on and pinching that nerve, and that nerve is going to my kidneys, and now I'm doing high-intensity exercises, what's that going to do? It's going to pound it, right? So you want to make sure that you're doing what you can to see if they have subluxation in their spine so they don't get worse when they're exercising. If someone's eating the healthiest foods, I knew it was going to go again. Well, I'm going to try. If someone's eating the healthiest foods, but the nerves are going to the intestines are being interfered with, are they going to absorb and assimilate that nutrition at 100%? No. So you could even be putting cinder block food to replace those bricks that fall out. But by the time it gets to your heart, or by the time it gets to your skin, or whatever it's becoming, it's not what it was created to be. Does that make sense? It's weaker because the absorption and the assimilation were not what they were supposed to be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so make sure that they're taking care of their nervous system because it is the primo facto part of your body that heals everything else. Like I said, you can live all that time without food, water, or air, but how long can you live without life? Not 1 second. You're dead immediately. If I cut a nerve going to your heart, what happens to that heart? It dies immediately. Right? So we want to make sure that you're taking care of that. Let's see if I can just try. As soon as I push the on button.
I think there was just a few left.
And so could you have, if this is your capacity for stress right here, and if you've got more physical, chemical, and emotional stress than your body can adapt to, guess what happens? boom. It shorts, it overloads the system. And so what part needs to be addressed? The physical stress? Say yes.
Yes.
The chemical stress?
Yes.
And the emotional stress?
Yes.
All of the above. So what's your plan for all of them? So over the next 30 days, what are going to be your physical, chemical, and emotional stress plan so that you age gracefully, so that you age healthily like the guy on the right, so that you don't cause oxidative stress? You know what oxidation is? It's rusting. You guys have heard of antioxidants, right? And so antioxidants go in there, your A, C, E, what is it, and selenium and a few others. They're there to fight oxidative stress. How do you know if you have oxidation in your body? Well, if you have inflammation, if you have a high cholesterol, you have inflammation oxidation. If you have high triglycerides, you have inflammation oxidation. If you have diabetes, you have inflammation oxidation. If you have, let's see what else, arthritis, you have inflammation oxidation. You know what your body does when you have inflammation in your body and oxidation? It releases something called a buffer. That buffer in your body, the most cheaply available one, is calcium. It pulls that calcium out of the bone. What do we call that? Osteoporosis or osteopenia. And it puts it on the edges of the bone. We call that arthritis. Okay? If you have pain, pain is just from inflammation as well. You know, a lot of people go to a chiropractor for pain, but this is not a pain center. You guys know that, right?
Yeah.
But the things that cause pain are a lack of the 5 essentials. If you have chronic pain, something in those 5 essentials is lacking. And it's time to start asking what, or how you can actually get to the cause of the problem. So, can you reduce the toxicity in your body?
Yes.
You know, if a doctor told me tomorrow, like my friend Charles Majors, who had 4 brain tumors, malignant brain tumors, and he told me that I had that issue going on, I would do exactly what he did, which is not to run towards the chemo or the radiation. And why did he do that? Because he figured he didn't create those tumors from a lack of chemo or radiation, but he accepted a certain amount of the responsibility. That he had toxins in his body that he wasn't dealing with. That he wasn't even doing his chiropractic care at 100% when it came to his home care. And he said, if the difference between cancer and no cancer is this 1%, and I'm doing 99%, then I've got to do 100%. And so he took his detox to the next level. He found out where those toxins were, and he actually had a bunch of heavy metals in his body and other things. And then he made sure he was doing his home care, not just 3 times a week like he was doing, but how often? Every day, because his atlas, which is the most important bone in his body, was actually, he had ligament damage on both sides from all of the bad adjusting that he had gotten over the course of, just to let you guys know, spinal corrective care, like the care that you guys get here, has only been around for about a decade. So before that, and I've been getting adjusted since I was 16 years old. So for the vast majority of my life too, I was getting racked and cracked, you know, indiscriminate of where the actual subluxations are. For every subluxation that you have in your spine, there is a specific adjustment for it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
If you had a fuse box and 3 switches are off, what do you do to those 3? You turn them on, and what do you do to the rest of them? Leave them alone. So if I just go to the fuse box and click, 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 did I just make the house healthier?
No.
It's dark in here, guys. No. Someone flipped our switch. So the idea would be to only adjust it where it needs it, in the right direction, at the right place, at the right time, to unleash that power, that same power that made you from a baby, or even from an embryo, to where you are now, is the same power that heals you. And so, when we go into the challenge over the next 30 days, I want to ask you a question. How many of you feel like someone that you know is headed towards heart disease, cancer, and diabetes? 5 out of 6 Americans. Raise your stinking hands, people. I can't even see you anyway. People that you know are sick and suffering and headed the wrong way because of a lack of knowledge, and even more than a lack of knowledge, because there's books out there. If they wanted to, could they not Google about nutrition, about these cultures that you just learned about tonight? And there's a whole lot more great information that I could have told you about. I'm sorry about the electricity.
It's more ignorance.
It's not even about ignorance.
But they know
It's
it, they just
laziness.
choose
Yeah. One of my good friends, Dr. Pete Camiolo up in Tennessee, just posted something the other day about how a fever is healthy, and how about people who used things to bring fevers down were actually, their mortality rate was equal to or actually greater than people who had the fevers and fought them off themselves. And about how those disporetics, the Tylenol and things like that, actually are responsible for a lot of liver damage and kidney damage in this country. 15 to 17,000 people a year die from that. So he was posting some things about fever and how fever is healthy. So don't be afraid of the fever. And you know how much hate stuff he got? He got so much about, well, you know what, I'd rather that my child got liver damage than that was uncomfortable, and kept us up at night. And I'm like, what? This video that you watched with the two old men with two paths that crossed in the woods, and one was the one less taken, the Robert Frost thing. Well, that video on YouTube, if you look it up, got so many hate comments because it revealed the thing that people don't like to see: responsibility. That they have a certain level of responsibility in your outcome. Do genetics play a part? Yeah, about 10%, but 90% of it is epigenetics, which means that you have a choice in your outcome. Just because mom had diabetes and dad had diabetes doesn't mean and guarantee that you will. And just because they had cancer and heart disease doesn't necessarily mean that you will. Just because you do doesn't mean that you couldn't get out of that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I was a really bad wrestler in high school, which is how I ended up becoming a chiropractor, because I got hurt. But I used to ask my coach every week in practice. I would end up on the mat in some crazy pretzel-like position underneath a kid who was probably half my size. And I'd say, hey coach, how do you get out of this move? And how do you get out of the one where your heel is hitting their head? And how do you get out of the one where your tongue is tied around your throat and you can't move? He'd say, Matt, stop asking me about how to get out of those moves and start learning about how not to get into them in the first place. Okay? So yeah, I want those of you who already have your diagnoses to get out of that bind. Okay? But more importantly, for those of you who who aren't there yet, when's the best time to check someone for nerve interference? After they have a scoliosis that's like this?
No, before.
I had a picture in my presentation of a girl who has a scoliosis that's like this. She's 47 years old. At 15 years old, she went to the doctor. The doctor said, you should just wait and see. You know what wait and see did for her?
Yeah, gave her that.
My mom had, at 12 years old, she had, with her scoliosis, she had cadaver bones that fused her lumbar vertebrae together. And her orthopedic surgeon said, you should never have children. She didn't listen to his advice, obviously. I was like, for those of you who did not know, I exist. So my sister and myself came out, and her spine, because of the relaxing, the orthopedist was actually right. Her spine shifted to the point where her ribs punctured her lung and her liver.
Oh my gosh.
They ended up having to put rods in her spine from here to here. The reason why I went to corrective care was because I have a prayer that someone doesn't have to go through what my mom went through. The fact that, you name the disease, my mom has experienced part of that over the course of her 60-something years of life, and the fact that she's been unable to pick up her grandchildren from the time that they weigh more than about 10 pounds is because she's so weak, and that never had to happen. I had another picture after that of a girl who came in when she had the similar degree scoliosis that the 47-year-old had when she was 15, and this 12-year-old girl had her scoliosis corrected in 9 months. So, does someone have to have a scoliosis to have interference in the nervous system? No. You can have a misalignment in your upper cervical spine, which puts pressure on your nerves. That can happen from the birth process. You can have text neck, which puts stretching tension on the spinal cord. And how do you know if you have subluxation? What's the only way to know if you have nerve interference physically, chemically, or emotionally? The nerve scan first will tell you if your brain and your body are communicating effectively. So that's why we do the nerve scan on you guys every re-exam, because we want to see if the nerves are actually talking properly to the body. That's how you know if you're improving. It's not based upon how you feel. A person can have the pressure coming off of the nerves and feel worse at first. Some of you have experienced this. Why? If you have a dead nerve that is now waking up, it's similar to if you are in your house and you're sleeping and there's a burglar in your house and you're sleeping. Does that cause you a whole lot of pain? No. But then all of a sudden, he drops something. He makes a noise. He gives you an adjustment. You wake up. Now you're in pain. Now you're emotionally freaking out, right? So as your body wakes up, what does your immune system do? It starts to kick out some of the things that don't belong there. We call that detoxification. How does it feel? Terrible. Okay? You have joints that have been stuck for 10, 20, 30 years, and they start to move. And they start to wake up your proprioceptors and the nociceptors, the pain receptors in your brain. And your brain says, what? What's going on here? And that might cause some inflammation and some pain in the beginning. But stick with it. Because the other side of it is so much better. The other thing I wanted to say is that every day is a new choice. You get a blank slate. It's not just New Year's, guys. You get that? And so just get better at making those choices. Get more attached to creating your pleasure of, I want a healthy life, than the instant gratification of, I want that cake right now. Does that make sense? And so the culture that you create in your household has to be outside of the U.S. culture if you want to not be on 6 or more medications. And so write that down. Write down exactly what it is that you want to look like, what you want to feel like, what you want to be doing, what the activities that are a must for you. And then also write down what is no longer within your standards, what you're no longer satisfied with, that you're sick and tired of being sick and tired for this reason. Does that make sense? So get familiar with that, but don't just write it down intellectually. You don't just need to write down another affirmation. What you need to do is get into your gut about it and feel passionate about it. Say and so when you're seeing this new reality for yourself, claim it in your heart, in your soul, so that you are just passionate about seeing it and loving that. And then, so in order to, because everyone wants to have stuff. You want to have success, right? Yes, everyone wants to have success in certain parts of your life. But in order to have, it's about doing things to have. In order to do things to have, you have to be the kind of person that does those kinds of things that then gets that kind of result. Too many people are flipping that around, and they say, well, if I just had that stuff, if I just had that relationship, then I would be able to do these things in that relationship with that other person, and then I would be that kind of person. They're putting the being or after the fact. But just flip that. Does that make sense? Yeah. If you don't have your new reality in a tangible way, act as if. Fake it until you make it. Okay? Create it here first. Everything that's ever existed in your tangible life started here. I can tell how you have thought about health over the last decade of your life just by looking at you. Okay? And by seeing your actions. So if you want to change this reality so that 10 years from now, you're the life of your dreams rather than the life of your nightmares, then create your dreams here and live them out. Okay? So, some of you may or may not see it, but you actually have this health survey. And this health survey